Hola, soy yo, Darío. Bienvenidos a la lección número 3. Welcome to lesson number 3. Do you notice that I switched the order to soy yo? Yeah? That doesn't mean that I'm asking who am I. What that means is it's me, Darío. Yeah? So, how would you ask a question in Spanish? What we do is just change the intonation when we say the phrase. For example, yo soy Darío, or soy yo Darío. Yeah, so that's the way we ask the question. And we put it between the question marks, which is on both sides, not like in English that is at the end. We put it on both sides. Now, but asking who am I is not a common question in any language. Something more common is asking how somebody is, like how are you? Well, that in Spanish, and I think a lot of people know that one, is ¿Cómo estás? So let's take a look at what's going on behind those two little words, which is actually a lot. The first part is como, with an accent mark on the first O, and that means how. If we take that accent mark out, what that means is I eat, or could also mean as or like, and we'll see it later. Another common example of the accent marks is in the word papa, which means potato. If we put an accent mark on the last day of the word papa, it becomes papa, and that means father. Yeah, and we'll get into that later. The second part of ¿Cómo estás? Is estás, and that means you are. It is the conjugated form of the verb to be, which brings us to the conjugation of verbs in Spanish. And for us to see that, we gotta take a look first at the structure of verbs in Spanish. So let's see it. Alright. The structure of verbs in Spanish. All the verbs in Spanish finish with the combination of letters ar, o, ir. For example, caminar, comer, vivir. We note that all those are verbs by the way they finish, with the combination of those two. I'm gonna call those two letters the extension of the verb. If we take them out, we're gonna have the root of the verb. For example, caminar, the extension is ar, and the root is camin. In the verb comer, the extension is er, and the root is com. And in vivir, the extension is ir, and the root is viv. Okay, so now that you know the structure of a verb in Spanish, you need to know that there are two main types of verbs in Spanish. The regular ones, and the other group will be the irregular. The regular verbs follow a simple rule of conjugation, while irregular verbs don't. So the way the conjugation of verbs work is we put the root plus the conjugated extension, and we put them together, and that becomes a conjugated verb. And for you to know that, you need to know first the pronouns in Spanish, which are yo, tú, él, ella, nosotros, nosotras, ustedes, ellos, ellas. Nosotros and ellas, it's for feminine. So if you saw lesson number 2, you'll know what I mean by that. Okay, now each pronoun has a different conjugation form. for the extension. So let's see how it is. If the extension of the verb is ar, becomes like this: yo, o, tú, has, él, ella, a, nosotros, amos, ustedes, ellos, ellas, an. And if the extension of the verb is er or ir, it becomes yo, o, tú, es, él, ella, nosotros, hemos, ustedes, ellos, ellas, en. So let's see some examples of these. The verb caminar becomes yo camino, tú caminas, él camina, ella camina, nosotros caminamos, ustedes caminan, ellos caminan, ellas caminan. The verb vivir becomes yo vivo, tú vives, él vive, ella vive, nosotros vivimos, ustedes viven, ellos viven, ellas viven. And the verb comer becomes yo como, tú comes, él come, ella come, nosotros comemos, ustedes comen, ellos comen, ellas comen. Okay, vamos. So, did you see that como without the accent mark? It means I eat. Como could also mean like when you're describing something. For example, yo camino como tú. That means I walk like you, right? And if you say como tú, that'll be how do I eat like you. And okay, and that's all there is to the conjugation of regular verbs in Spanish. The conjugation of irregular verbs, I'm gonna leave that for another lesson because it is a bit more complicated, because irregular verbs not only change the extension of the root, but they also change the root. So that's gonna be for later. Now let's get back to estás, which is the conjugated form for the verb to be, which in Spanish has two meanings: ser y estar. Ser refers to the being of subject. For example, if that person is shy, or that person is outgoing, or who that person is. Estar refers to the current state of the person. For example, if that person is cold, or that person is upset, or is doing something. So when you ask how are you, you're asking for the state of that person, and that'll be the verb estar. And after you conjugate it, it becomes estás. And there you have it. ¿Cómo estás? We don't really need to say the tú there. You could leave it out. You could also say it and say ¿Cómo tú estás? But since the verb is already conjugated, you don't really need it. You could just omit it. Okay? I'm gonna put on my website a list of all the irregular verbs, and also a list of the most used verbs in Spanish, which are like 60 verbs. And you can take a look at that there. And yeah, that's it for now. See you next time.